So it's a pleasure and an honor to introduce our speakers for today. And one of the reasons that we invited them here today is because Earth Day is tomorrow. So I think it's very complimentary to hear about some of the initiatives the city is dealing with the urban forestry canopy. Our speakers today are Tom Reed, who's the City of Boulder forester and has been helping to manage the public trees of the City of Boulder for the last 4 years. Caitlin Baruba-Smith, who serves dual roles as the Associate Director of the Play Foundation and as the Program Coordinator for the City of Boulder Parks and Recreation. And we have Margo Josephs, who is Community Partnerships and Outreach Manager for the City of Boulder's Parks and Recreation and the liaison between the department and the Play Boulder Foundation as well. So I think it's very fitting that today they're going to be talking about the Boulder Urban Tree Canopy and our shared responsibility in ensuring its sustainability into the future, and really the role that we play as individuals and as a community in contributing towards supporting that sustainability. So just before I pass it on over to them, I'd like to sort of mention that we keep in mind that trees are not just individual trees, that they're part of an ecosystem, and this is not just environmental, it's socio, ecological, and economic ecosystem as one. So looking at the benefits of trees, it's beyond just the environmental component. So with that, I'd like to finish with a small quote by John Muir, who said, "When one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it attached to the rest of the world." So thank you, and we're welcome to.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Margo, thanks for the introduction, Charlotte. First off, on behalf of the City of Boulder and the Parks and Recreation Foundation, the Play Boulder Foundation, thank you for everything that Rotary does for this community. I've been fortunate enough in the last couple months to be able to work with several people in this room to help facilitate some of the projects that you are so generously wanting to give to the community, and it's been wonderful so far to work with everyone, and I'm excited that some of these things will come to fruition in the coming years and leave a lasting legacy on the community, so thank you for that. Today, what we're going to be talking about, as you've heard, is our urban canopy. Very timely conversation for us in the community. Some of us in the City of Boulder have been focusing on some of the current challenges we're having with that, specifically over the past couple years, which you'll hear more about. But we also are going to be transitioning to talk about how the Play Boulder Foundation is a partner in this solution that we are looking at, and how they, along with the rest of the community, can come along and be part of the solution in how we deal with this environmental challenge. So I'm going to start by giving a brief overview about my role in this relationship and about the partnership between the Play Boulder Foundation and the Parks and Recreation Department. And then I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Tom here to give you a little bit of an overview about where the urban canopy currently is today, give you some stats and numbers to kind of set the stage for why this is such a critical conversation. And then Caitlin's going to review a little bit about what the Play Boulder Foundation is doing about that. At the end, we'll have some time for questions, so hopefully we can have a little bit of a dialogue if anyone has any questions. So, as I mentioned, the Play Boulder Foundation is the nonprofit partner of the Parks and Recreation Department. We have been in a long-standing partnership for over 30 years. My position was actually created about 3 years ago, and one of my main roles as an employee of the City of Boulder's Parks Department is to serve as a liaison to the Play Boulder Foundation. When I got there, we had a really unique opportunity to be able to revision what it is that we do together and how we work together. If you look around the nation, public-private partnerships are becoming more and more part of the conversation, and they are solutions to a lot of the challenges that we're facing as governments, as budgets continue to shrink, as resources continue to be strained. We're looking to how we can lean on our public-private partnerships. So it was natural for us in the Parks Department to really think about how are we doing that within our own department. And so my work since I've started has been to figure out how can we really ensure a strategic alignment with our existing nonprofit partner, and how can we elevate that to be able to solve some of our shared challenges that we have in the community. As you see in this diagram, the middle three areas are things that we have collectively identified as areas that will continue to always be of need in the community and be areas where we need to go beyond what the city resources can achieve. So these three areas, achieving access for all, environmental sustainability, and creating great public spaces are areas that the Parks and Recreation Department and the Play Boulder Foundation have identified as core focus areas that we're going to be working on together for the indefinite future. So pretty much all the work that we do in our department that falls under these three areas, we look to the Play Boulder Foundation as how can we work collectively on that. Because as the nonprofit partner of the foundation, the Play Boulder Foundation is able to do things that the city cannot do. They can go out and rally the community in ways that we're unable to do on our own. So we're really appreciative of that. Today we're going to be focusing on the environmental sustainability piece of that relationship. And because of the discovery of emerald ash borer here in our community, which you'll hear more about in a second, it was very clear that in that area of focus, trees was going to be something that was going to be a continual uphill battle for us as a city to manage, and we are going to need to rely on the community to help with that. So the idea of developing a tree trust and having that live under the Play Boulder Foundation was a natural fit, and something that we're really excited to be sharing with you today as it kind of is just starting to bud up and take root in the community here. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Tom so he can give you a little bit more of an overview of where we are with the Canopy, and look forward to answering questions in a minute.
Thanks, Margo. I'm going to stand off to the side here a little bit so I can see the screen. Like Margo and Charlotte both mentioned, I'm Tom Reed. I work with the City of Boulder's Forestry Office, and I've been with them for about 4 years. Like Margo, my position is fairly new as well, and my position was created because of a pest that we have in town that is jeopardizing a huge portion of our urban canopy, and I'll get to that in just a bit. So, you're lucky in Boulder here. We have a pretty progressive forestry department that has had an inventory of all of our public trees for quite some time. Just back in 2014, we updated that entire inventory. So we had the field technicians go throughout the whole city, all the public property that's managed by forestry, and update our entire tree canopy, or excuse me, our entire tree inventory. That inventory is actually available to the public 24 hours a day on the internet. The website's boulderforestry.org. We manage something like 50,000 trees. I say 50,000 because it literally changes by the day. If you think back to last Tuesday, we lost a few. So that number went down on Tuesday. I planted 13 yesterday with a grade school for Arbor Day, so that number will go up when our technicians put those new trees in the inventory for us. We do have over 200 unique species in this town. We need more, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. Forestry sits underneath the Parks and Rec organizational umbrella, but the trees that we manage are not all just in park properties. So forestry actually manages trees in the street right-of-ways, in the medians, and the parks. Only about a quarter of the trees that we manage are in the parks. 3/4 of them are in the right-of-way, sometimes in front of private residences, sometimes in the median along Foothills Parkway, that sort of thing. 50,000 is a lot of trees to manage. So who is Boulder Forestry? Boulder Forestry is made up of one city forester. That is not me. I'm one of her assistants. Our city forester has been with the city for about 17 years, I believe. Her name's Kathleen Alexander. Underneath her, we have 3 assistants, of which I am one. My main focus is the bug that we're going to talk about here in a second. We've also got a field operations manager, some technicians that work in the field for us. These are the folks you see out with a chipper, climbing trees, that sort of thing. And then we bring in seasonal employees every year. The sort of services that we provide for those 50,000 public trees are listed there, and I won't go through them. A lot of you are probably already aware of them. We plant trees, we remove trees, we prune trees, we take care of insect and disease problems for the city. We do a lot of outreach, as well as all the other things there. We've got a robust arborist licensing program in this town. Something like 50-some trained licensed arborists that can work on public and private trees in this town. So as I mentioned, specifically my role with the city is to take care of one particular pest that we'll get into in just a second. The reason the city brought me on is that trees in Colorado are honestly, especially here in Boulder, kind of always in peril. If you think about Boulder in the late 1800s, we didn't really have a whole lot of trees. We had big cottonwoods and some other native trees along the waterways and things, but Boulder's mostly afforested. Human beings planted trees and watered trees and cared for trees to get them to where they are now. This town has plenty of 100-year-old trees, and that's because lots and lots of people cared for those trees. The sort of things the sort of things that hurt trees in Colorado, and the reason trees wouldn't naturally be here on their own unless we took care of them, are all the crazy weather events that we get here. You know, Tuesday is the perfect example. It's windier in Colorado than it tends to be in Florida. So we see 100-mile-an-hour winds in this state all the time. That's tough on trees. I think the other day we were in the low 70s. Even healthy trees, succumb to winds like that on occasion. We get a lot of snow, so do other places, but we tend to get it after trees have leafed out or before they've lost their leaves, so that's really hard. Certainly plenty of drought here as well. Then as this city continues to grow and develop, trees are always battling with either private development or, our municipal projects as well. Specifically, what I do for the city is manage the bug we'll talk about next, and so I'll mention that. What I kind of like to call the global mixing of paint. When the chicken flu is sneezed in Asia, it suddenly gets on a plane and it winds up in North America really quickly, right? Well, then doctors work to help us with it. Trees evolve so slowly, and there's so few people paying attention to the insects and disease that mess with trees that when an insect from another part of the world shows up here in North America, our trees tend to not have any resistance to it, and it takes them a long time to catch up themselves, and they need a lot of help from us. And so that's kind of what I help the city of Boulder with. How many people, by show of hands real quick, know anything about emerald ash borer yet? I'm doing my job. This is good. Good. Cool. So emerald ash borer is a non-native invasive beetle from Asia. It came over to the United States in the early 2000s, and it has done massive amounts of damage in the Midwest. The one silver lining for us out here in Boulder is that this bug is not new to North America, and it has been thoroughly researched by universities back in the Midwest. So we kind of have a template to follow on how to manage this thing. This bug, it's fairly black and white. What we know from the Midwest is that our North American ash have no resistance, and they die when this bug shows up in town. They die fairly quick, within 7 to 10 years or so. What the Midwest showed us was that there are pesticides that can save these trees. If you don't treat these trees with pesticides, they're almost certain to die. Less than 1% survive in most cases. Why is that so important in the western states? Because Boulder currently sits around 12% ash in our public canopy. That's the #1 species we have. We get a lot of benefits from those trees. Our overall, that's 12% of our public trees. Our overall urban canopy, which I'll describe in just a second, we think is something more like 24% green ash. I do a lot of speaking specifically about emerald ash borer, and as these guys know, I could talk about emerald ash borer for like the next half hour, so I'll stop right now, more or less. But what everybody wants to know is it in my neighborhood yet? Do I need to start making these awful decisions about using a pesticide that I'm not comfortable with potentially, or removing this tree that I love? Emerald ash borer is in every neighborhood in Boulder, and it's been there for a little while. If you've heard me speak before, now is the time. Last year was more likely the time to make your decisions about what you want to do. So that last slide, was pictures of symptomatic and dying ash trees in every part of Boulder. So real quickly, let me describe what the urban canopy is compared to our public tree inventory. We think my office might manage something like 10% of all the trees in this town. Really, the trees in this town grow on private property. I think up there you'll see it says 25% of the trees are managed by either my office, by the CU, some federal property, or also Boulder Valley School District. The other 75% of the canopy, so total leaf cover that you see when you look down from space, the other 75% of that is all on private property. And so my office can educate ourselves, can make plans for how to deal with these sort of things, and we can manage our trees, But if we don't reach out to you guys, get help from the private folks, it's not going to really do us any good. I like to remind people that, we all benefit a great deal from these trees, and trees don't know property lines. And so the tree in your neighbor's yard, the tree even on the other side of town, is providing massive benefits to the whole city that we need to recognize. And that's part of the reason why we like to do so much outreach. Just in the past few years, we discovered emerald ash borer in Boulder in 2013. After discovering it, instead of building simply an emerald ash borer management plan and saying this is how we're going to take care of emerald ash borer, the city forester, my boss, was smart enough to say what we need to do is build an urban forest master plan, because emerald ash borer might be the first big bug we deal with, but there's another one coming down the road, and it could be a disease, could be a fungus, anything like that. And so my boss decided to work on an urban forest strategic plan that would encompass the whole canopy, private and public, and set us up with a roadmap for what to do in the future. You want to step in, Margo?
So this is kind of where I come back in the picture and start to figure out how do we work with the rest of the community to solve this problem, because again, it isn't just forestry that's going to be able to solve it or address it. So as you can see, and as you've heard, and we're hitting this home this hard, 75% of the canopy is on private property. And so that was clearly identified in our recent urban forest strategic plan. And as you can see, one of the main priorities and actions that was identified in the plan is to support the development of a nonprofit urban forest foundation or a tree trust to support the canopy goals of management. So if you remember in the beginning, as I was talking about how Play Boulder Foundation is our existing nonprofit partner, it was only natural that we looked to work with the foundation to figure out how can we collectively solve this problem. So now I will hand it off to explain why and how the foundation is stepping in to help with the solution and launching the Boulder Tree Trust.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. I'm the Associate Director for Play Boulder Foundation. And we officially launched the Tree Trust in February of 2018, but we actually created the Play Boulder Tree Trust in 2015 when the City of Boulder Parks and Recreation began working on the Urban Forest Strategic Plan. So it took us about 2 years to really work with the department and identify not only what we wanted the Tree Trust to outline, but going back to what Margo started the presentation off with, what were those 3 focus areas that the City of Boulder Parks and Recreation Department and their nonprofit partner would really work together on. And just for review, those are access for all, environmental sustainability, and creative placemaking. And so the Boulder Tree Trust is actually an initiative that is housed under our environmental sustainability focus area. And I'm happy to discuss afterwards, or you can visit playboulder.org if you'd like to learn more about access and creative placemaking. But today I'm going to dive deeper into what the Tree Trust is doing. So, as again Margo has said, Play Boulder Foundation, we are the independent nonprofit partner 501c3 of the City of Boulder Parks and Recreation. What does that mean? What we are is we are that fundraising arm for the department. We take what the community wants that is beyond the capability and the capacity of the city to really give the community their fullest desires in terms of public spaces, having access to our facilities, and again, creating a healthy urban environment. And so the Tree Trust, while it is housed under Play Boulder, and again, under our environmental sustainability focus area, it is actually governed and receives a certain level of oversight from a separate independent committee. And so currently, our committee consists of 18 members. We have 2 Boulder Rotarians, which we're very proud about, on our committee. One is Kai, and then of course Charlotte. And they've both been instrumental in kind of helping us kick off what we think this Tree Trust is going to allow our community to really move past and strengthen our own local environment. So just to kind of review some of our current partners, we have members of CU, because again, while that is still private property, it is not property that is governed and managed by the City of Boulder. We have Tatakin Tree Care and Davy Tree Company. So those are two private tree companies who may be able to come in and actually treat your ash tree. We have local nurseries, arts organizations, and we are continually seeking new members. So our initial project deliverables are kind of pretty high up when you think about the fact that it doesn't, dive deep into specific program elements that we're hoping to launch in the near future. But we want to focus on outreach at the community level, at community events and at city events, education, potentially with technology or mapping, or creating a strong relationship with the Boulder Valley School District. Support through tree plantings and volunteerism. Volunteerism is really a way to double or triple the city's capacity and place capacity in terms of managing our urban forest. And then also awareness. It seems like this room right here is pretty aware of EAB, but a lot of our community is not aware that it's reached Boulder yet, and it is going to significantly threaten our environment, which, as Charlotte was saying, significantly threatens our social structure, our economic structure, and much else. And so we've had 3 committee meetings so far. At our last committee meeting, we were really able to kind of spearhead what our next steps are going to be in making the Tree Trust what it is for the future. Our first step is to establish an identity for the Tree Trust, and so that's a mission and a vision, which is going to be something along the lines of connecting our community with our urban forest to better the health of our local urban environment. We are developing a tree tender training program, and what that is going to look like is training key individuals throughout the Boulder community to really become champions at how to manage and how to prolong the life of trees on private property. And so that can be anything from pruning to watering and care, and even knowing where to go to treat trees if they happen to be infected with EAB, emerald ash borer. From there, we're hoping to bring that tree keeper program into specific neighborhoods so we can really have neighborhood champions at that neighborhood level. Then we're hoping to, again, build upon that and bring that to Boulder Valley School District to begin the education outreach with youth, and hoping that that will trickle along when they go home after school to their parents as well. So again, this is really all to raise community awareness, to create education, and to create a certain skill set. If we can arm ourselves with the knowledge of how to better our environment through volunteerism and through these public-private partnerships, we really can maintain our urban canopy at 16% where it is right now. And so that is the goal of the Boulder Tree Trust. And really quickly, the picture over, I guess, on your right is a picture from last year's event at McGuckin's Earth Day birthday party, which is happening tomorrow. And Play Boulder Foundation and the city will be there, and we'll be handing out 260 free trees of about 6 to 8 species. So please, if you are available, come pick up your free tree and plant it in honor of Earth Day, and of course in honor of the Rotarians. That's all.
So thanks again for your time. I think we have a couple minutes for some questions, so we'd be happy to answer any questions directed at any of us. Sure, so I'll start over there because I saw you first.
When we look around Boulder, we see so many deciduous trees, and they are susceptible to many of the things that you identified, late heavy snow, winds, these kind of insects. As these trees die off,
Yeah, it's a really good question. So he asked if we're considering planting more evergreen trees instead of so many deciduous trees down here in town. Certainly. I mean, the big answer to what do we replace all these ash trees with is diversity. The reality is that evergreens don't quite come so far east. Once you get out of the foothills, eastern Boulder years ago wouldn't have had evergreens. Certainly, you know, the foothills and as we move west out of town and up into Chautauqua Meadow, you would have started to see some of those. Just as you don't see aspen down here. And aspen down here, even though it loves it up in the mountains, it's a real trouble tree down here. It's very hard to keep aspen alive for very long, as some of you may know. And so, yeah, so we're open to trying all sorts of some of these new cultivars of evergreen trees that would be more columnar and things. In an urban environment, however, you'd be surprised. Conifers can cause problems for public works and things like that. What's nice with a deciduous tree is that it does lose its leaves in the winter, and it allows sun to hit our roads and clear ice up. So believe it or not, we've got some city code keeping evergreens out of the right-of-way for just that reason. But in our parks and a lot of other places, I think it's a really great idea. Really, the take-home message is diversity. And so if you have an inventory that's as detailed as ours, and trust me, not all cities are, but we can go through that 50,000 tree inventory, and when we go to plant somewhere, say, show me the species dynamic in this neighborhood, with our public trees anyhow, and say, well, we got too much honey locust there. Let's hold off on the honey locust for a few years and try some other things. So yeah, we're always open to new species and some of the new cultivars. I think evergreens have their place in Boulder, just as the deciduous trees do.
Yes, I was wondering, since the ash trees demise goes fairly quickly, when do you decide when to take out the
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So he asked us, since the ash trees decline so fast, how do you yourself or us as a city decide when to, the city? Yeah. Yeah, well, certainly. From a municipal standpoint, different municipalities in the Midwest have done it different ways before us. My boss's goal is to somehow keep up with it just perfectly. And so as we notice that an ash has declined, hopefully that season we'd come in and be able to remove it if our resources can keep up. Other foresters in the Midwest that didn't have maybe as robust of a forestry department as us took their entire forestry budget for a couple years in a row and did no planting, no maintenance of other trees, but simply removed all their ash as quick as they could, oftentimes before those ash even started to decline. Well, the reality is all these, and the way my boss and I look at trees is that they provide actual measurable benefits to the city. Stormwater runoff reduction, things of this nature. If all these ash died very, very quickly, or we removed them all preemptively, our storm sewers might not be able to keep up with the runoff. And so what we are attempting to do is to remove the ash as my eyes notice they decline. That being said, there's always little scenarios. I'd like to be slightly preemptive when it's near a grade school. I'd like to be a bit on the err on the side of caution in that respect. In other areas where there may be no targets or something like that, I'd like to wait until I see the tree decline and then remove it.
We'll go in the back. Oh, someone already has a mic.
Go for it.
Got a question.
Yep.
How much do bees like the poisons that you put on ash?
Sure.
To be realistic.
Yeah, no, this conversation could last an hour if we go into the pesticide world. The reality of emerald ash borer and pesticides is, like I said, we get to reap the benefit of all the science that happened in the Midwest. There is at least four different, well, even more, at least four chemicals that have proven to be effective at controlling emerald ash borer. Those four chemicals are now being made by a handful of different companies. And so the pesticide discussion, you really need to be sure that you're comparing apples to apples. What I would encourage everybody to do is to visit eabboulder.org. On that website, you'll find a pesticide comparison sheet for emerald ash borer options. It was written by my boss, Kathleen Alexander, and the city's citywide IPM coordinator who reviews all chemicals and pesticide in the city, Rella Abernathy. The two of them and myself put together this comparison, and it is not sugar-coated in the slightest. The last thing I would want to do is to convince everybody, and it would be to convince everyone to use one of these pesticides to treat their ash trees, and then we find out down the road that it was a really big mistake. There are some that seem to be on the nicer side of the spectrum, and some that are just flat out prohibited on public property. So some of you may know neonicotinoids, which get a lot of bad press for a lot of good reasons, are completely prohibited on public property in the city of Boulder. So our Emerald Ash Borer program, we manage 6,000 ash. We treat about 1,500 of them. None of them are treated with a neonicotinoid. They're not allowed on public property. So I think in the spectrum of the pesticides, there's some that I'm comfortable with using to slow this thing down a little bit and keep some of these city benefits while everybody's helping me replant trees. But there's some that the city's absolutely not even willing to consider. So I go on that website, read about it, do your research, listen to as many people as possible.
I just want to ask, what were the 6 different kinds of trees that you were going to suggest?
Yeah, well, there's more than 6. What I would ultimately like is for everybody to look at what their neighbor has on both sides of them and plant something their neighbor doesn't have. Truly diversity. The idea of urban forestry in the future is that we never have over 5% of one species. That way, if a bug comes in from another part of the world and it wants to kill 5% of the trees I manage, I'm going to let it. I'm going to throw money at the planting budget again. I'm going to get out there and do outreach, get folks to help us, and we'll let that 5% go. We'll replace them with species that don't need a pesticide just to survive. Unfortunately, decisions in the past have put us in this spot where we are so high on the ash population and our city services depend on them so much that we can't let them all go really quick, and we've got to at least buffer ourselves a little bit.
Tom.
Yeah.
We get the last word.
Bring it.
Margo, Caitlin, Tom, thank you so much for your presentation today. And we'd like to make a donation in your honor to the Polio Plus campaign that Rotary International is involved in to eradicate polio around the world. It's getting close and we're almost there, and you guys just help us out. So thank you so much for your talk today.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you.